All right, we will call this meeting to order. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone, for braving the cold to be with us tonight. Al, if you could start us off with a roll call, please.
Benson.
Here.
Sarda. Here. Burdick.
Here.
Hoffman.
Present.
Minor. Here. Strom.
Here.
Weber. Here. Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
City Attorney Yankton.
Here. You have before you the minutes of the Special City Commission meeting of January 13th, as well as the regular meeting of January 13th, 2020. What is your pleasure?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Next, you have before you the schedule of bills. What is your pleasure?
Move to pay the bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about the bills? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission about the bills? Roll call.
Strom.
Aye.
Take votes first and second. Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Next is the city manager's report.
Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission and public, our mission is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive. Tomorrow is Yankton Day at the legislature, so we have a couple of commissioners and a handful of staff that will be traveling to Pier in the early hours. Also want to remind you that February 25th is Yankton, the State of the Community address, and the City of Yankton will be featured there, so I'll be giving that address at the chamber function, and if you'd like to attend, you can contact Colleen. She'll get you registered. Petitions for City Commission will be available on Friday, January 31st. Those must be turned in by Friday, February 28th. So for folks interested in running for City Commission, that is the time frame. Also like to remind everybody that we have a very important event that will determine a lot of bragging rights called Battle of the Badges. That is set to take place on Sunday, February the 9th. So I don't know if you're cheering for the fire department or the police department, or if you even want to say. But please come and join that event. That'll be at Simple Arena. Always a good fundraiser and a really nice way to support a lot of special community organizations there. So that will be a lot of fun. We have several job openings right now with the city. We have our many summer seasonal positions open. We also have a number of full-time staff. So if you're interested in making a difference in the community and having fun while you're doing it, we encourage people to apply. They can see our job listings on our city website under job openings. If there's no questions of me, I will let you get to your business.
I know one question I get a fair amount is, do we have water running through the new plant yet? I think the answer is not quite yet.
Well, there's water running through the plant. It is not in the distribution system yet. My understanding is a part was picked up in Vermilion today, and once it's installed, then that will trigger us putting water in the pipes. And Kyle's nodding his head, so that must be the case. Late this week, early next week.
Excellent. Are there any questions for the city manager? Then we'll move on to public appearances, and this is a time when anyone in the audience can address the commission about anything not on our agenda this evening. We do have a few planned public appearances. The city manager has a few individuals she would like to introduce to us and the public.
Sure. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Richard Fersman to you all. So if you'd like to join us at the podium. Dr. Fersman is with Hugh Life, and he is helping us with our search for our Director of Human Resources and Employee Engagement. Dr. Fersman is a former city manager from the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, and as a graduate student aspiring to be a city manager, he was a mentor and someone who I very much looked up to, and am fortunate to be able to work with him now and have him see some of the lessons that he taught me in city management, and have him help us look for our next leader in our organization. Dr. Fersman met with myself and some staff today, and he also had a tour of our community. He also had lunch with the mayor, and we invited Commissioner Benson with us because of her expertise in human resources. So he got to know a couple of us and our organization a little bit better, but I will let him introduce himself further and talk about the work he's going to do for Yankton.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mayor and Commission members. I'll just take a couple minutes. That's it. Amy, you've still know how to just butter people up very, very well. You haven't lost that skill at all, and you're very good at it. So it's really special to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with the city. Actually, I didn't know that much, frankly, about Yankton. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to dig, and the more I dig, the more I wanted to learn. And so I did spend almost an entire day talking with staff, and then a meeting over lunch, as Amy had said, and just getting to know the many facets of Yankton. And as soon as you learn one, you discover, well, oh, I didn't, what, you do what? And you have this? And so it was very interesting. And so talking to the staff, and many of the staff have come from other parts of the country or other parts of the state, and I asked them essentially, if I were going to go talk to a stranger and you were going to tell them about your Yankton experience, what would it be? What would people want to know? What would make the special sauce of this community? And so, very briefly, this is the quintessential American city. And almost, you know, if you can find Mayberry in heart and soul, this would be it. And so what are some of the things that make it that way? Well, the outdoor attractions. And there's so many that I'm not going to name all the ones that were told to me because of just the number, other than to say it's a park city. It's a city of parks and recreation. I mean, you can go anywhere. I think if you had to say what's the soul of the community, I think that would be it. It's the excellent schools, first-class medical. But when I boiled it all down and I asked, okay, that a lot of communities say that, and then what's it like? I mean, when you move in, do you truly get accepted? I've been in small towns where I've asked people, well, how long did it take for you to become, oh, I moved here 35 years ago, I'm still considered out of town. And they said, no, it's really immediate that people start inviting you into their circle. There isn't a closed set of hurdles that you have to jump over in order to be accepted. And some of those stories about being accepted immediately and about being helped immediately were I haven't heard them before. I have to admit, I've been through a lot of places, and I'm quite frank with people, and I want to know, because when people call me and they ask, I'm interested in this position, tell me truly, what is it like? And I give it to them straight, because you don't want to fool people. That is the last thing you want to do. So the other thing that came to mind was a complete community. And I think anytime you have a community of this size and separated from other metropolitan areas, they have to be complete. You have to be independent. You have to have the jobs. You have to have the entertainment. You have to have the festivals and the feeling of community, all which is there. But it's not stagnant. It's clear that there are times when change was slow or non-existent. The only change that we had was that we were getting older. Now it's a city that I would call going through transformation, while honoring the past. So you see the echoes of trying to hang on to the past, rehabilitate the past through the downtown and other areas, but still transitioning to new things that we've never tried before. And so that's a very exciting time. So then I said, well, describe the organization. What do we see in the organization? And won't go through them all, but it starts at the top. There's recognition that this commission is seen as visionary. It's seen as willing to take steps to continuously improve the community. We don't want to sit still. We want to be progressive. We want to do things smartly to make sure that we are relevant into the future. And the steps that you're taking. So on the tour, seeing the plant, seeing the improvement, seeing the real, seeing the pool coming about, and the community taking control of its own destiny and saying, no, we're not going to sit back and sink. We are going to thrive. And so that was seen as leadership from the top. At City Hall, some words that came up over and over again were an inclusive. If you have something to say, you can say it, and people will take it seriously. Okay, you're going to be asked your opinion up and down the organization. And if you open your mouth, you will be heard. Okay, it's supportive that way. We'll support people who are struggling. We'll support people who need us, and we're going to support your advancement. We're going to be a team. We are a team. We want to remain a team. We're accepting of new ideas. And then the word I'm always looking for, which came up, was fun. Okay. And fun doesn't mean frivolous. Fun means I enjoy what I'm doing. Fun means that when I walk in, I've got a best friend at work. It means that I can relate to people who I work with, and I relate to them even after work. They are our neighbors. They are people that we see. And so finally, well, if that's the case, if we are hunting for a person, the ideal candidate to walk through the door, who are we looking for? And I summed it up to be develop our department or our HR role as a proactive builder of competence. We want HR to be a proactive builder of competence in our organization, and that means some things. It means providing direct help with hiring, providing direct help with developing staff, providing direct help with retention, which were a big component of what you had on your strategy up here. And it's being echoed through the voices in City Hall currently that this is what we want. We want someone who's going to be approachable, will connect with our culture inside City Hall, but while challenging it, because we just can't stop growing as a culture. Be a great communicator, an employee advocate, and a strong leader. And I think in order to do that, and looking at it, it's something that whoever comes in is going to have to be strong enough and wise enough and have enough support from you and from the community inside City Hall to allow them to construct this from sort of the ground up, or really build this HR function in the eyes, listening to the employees and with the wisdom of the person that's brought in and the wisdom that the council can share. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be describing you in the way I described here, and the community and the workplace. And I think with that kind of description and that kind of challenge, it should be a great place to work. I know it will be. And we'll get some great people to put their hand up and say, would you please interview me for this job? I'd want to be part of this great team. So that's all I have. I just wanted to give you that. As far as the schedule, and I'll do that occasionally. I'll say that's all I have and then continue. So I apologize. I'm a little like Amy that way. I don't know if I think I learned that from her as opposed to the other way around. But so the process is I'll be developing the complete profile in the next week, and we'll be going out to advertisements in February and be recruiting for about a month, and then I'll be screening the applicants and doing deep dives with them, looking at writing assignments and who they are, and doing an in-depth in their personality and what they want to achieve in their professional career, something that sets them apart, and putting that into a report that I'll be sharing then with Amy. And once that's done, we'll set it up for questions, or for, when I mean questions, is interviews here at City Hall, and we'll be including staff in those, and other experts, HR experts, I hope. We can get some from the, I won't mention anybody's name, but, and so somebody will be starting towards the end of May or beginning of June. So that's the process. So, all right. Unless there's any questions, Your Honor, I'll let you get on with business.
Commissioners, any questions for Dr. Firstman? Once again, thank you for taking the time to get to know our community. Thank you for the kind words. We always are open to compliments. Those are nice to hear. And we look forward to you helping us find another successful teammate to help us move forward.
All right, thank you. Have a great evening.
Maybe you have one more introduction.
Yes, actually two.
Or two
One
more.
is not listed, but first I'd like to introduce Lisa Yardley. She's our Deputy Finance Officer. Lisa started, I guess, last Monday. She comes to us from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I don't know, Lisa, if you want to say hello at the podium or anything, you certainly can do that. She has been the CFO, Administrative Specialist for a Special Fire District in Cheyenne, so the fire department's especially excited to have her because she has a lot of female grant experience. I don't know if she's good at basketball, but that might be something that Tom will want to find out. She has her bachelor's degree in finance and management from Chadron State College and her master's degree in business administration from Columbia Southern University. So we welcome her, and I wanted you all to get eyes on her and join me in welcoming her to the team.
Hello. I want to just introduce myself. Thank you for having me, City Commissioners. I'm so excited to meet with you all and work with you. I love Yankton. I love everything here. Your values match my own. So I really look forward to working with you and being a part of this great team.
Welcome. Thank you, Lisa.
You're from Creighton, Nebraska, right?
I am.
So I'm from Crofton,
Yes.
so I welcome a new Northeast Nebraska
Knox
teammate.
County. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
I'd also like to introduce to you and to the public Jolly Omar. Jolly is a master's degree student at USD studying public administration, and he has an interest in working for a city one day. So Jolly is new, hired on as our administrative intern, and we've already got him working on a number of projects, and he'll be heading up to Pier, in fact, tomorrow to learn about that process. So, Jolly, if you want to say hello to the commissioners and tell them a little bit about yourself, you're certainly welcome to. I know he's a sports fan, and I think he is being recruited possibly by the police department to play with them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, yes, I've heard. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, if you want me to be, on one of the teams, it'd be fun. But I feel like you should do rock paper scissors to see who should have me. But we'll decide that later. But I'm originally from Sioux Falls. I grew up there for 18 years, and then I attended Sioux Falls, Washington. So go Warriors. I got my undergrad in political science and business at USD. And then during that time, I was also the assistant debate coach here at Yankton High School. So if you know Leo Callis, I kind of learned under him, and he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot about philosophy, ethics, and oh man, he was smart. He was a smart guy. But after that, I took a year off, did some political work with Dusty Johnson's campaign, and after that, I realized that I didn't want to be in politics. So I went back, and now I'm getting my master's degree in public administration, and I'm in my final semester. So as long as nothing goes, horribly wrong, I'll be getting my degree in May. So, well, cross your fingers for me. So nice to meet you all.
Welcome, Jolly. And I told Jolly he could take off because he's got an early day tomorrow. So that's all of the introductions I have for you all.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the commission about a topic not on tonight's agenda? If so, please step to the podium. Seeing no movement, we will move on to our consent item agenda. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 20-15 recommending approval of the applications from the Riverboat Days Committee for a transient merchant license for August 21st through 23rd and a special events dance license for August 21st through 23rd. Number 2 is establishing February 10th, 2020 as the date for the public hearing on the new retail on-off sale wine and cider license for January 1st to December 31st, 2020 from Two Rivers Technology LLC, doing business as The Boathouse, and Chris Hunoff is the CEO. Number 3 is establishing February 10th, 2020 as the date for the public hearing on the new retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license for July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 from Two Rivers Technology. What is your pleasure?
Move the consent items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about any one of these consent items? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on any of these items? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you. Moving on to old business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 20-08 regarding the request for a special events malt beverage on-sale retailer's license and special retail on-sale wine dealer's license for February 1st, 2020 from the 6th Meridian LLC, doing business as Counterfeit Catering. And this will be for an event at the National Field Archery Association. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-09 regarding the request for a special malt beverage on-sale retailer's license for August 21st through 23rd, 2020 from Yankton Area Riverboat Days, Inc. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Abstain.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-10 regarding the request for a special malt beverage on-sale retailer's license for August 21st through 23rd, 2020 from Yankton Area Riverboat Days, Inc. And this would be their rain location at City Hall Auditorium, if necessary. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would anyone on the commission like to discuss this item further? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye. Aye. Abstain.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 4 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-11 regarding the request for a new malt beverage, off-sale malt beverage, and South Dakota farm wine license for June 30th, 2019 to July 1st, 2020 for Casey's Retail Company. And this will be at their new location at 2300 Broadway. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 5 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-12 regarding the request for a special events retail on-sale liquor license for February 22nd, 2020 from Boomers Inc., and this will be for an event at the National Field Archery Association. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 6, a departure from the alcohol licenses. Consideration of memorandum 20-13 regarding the second reading of ordinance number 1031, amending general parking and parking-related regulations found within Chapter 14 of the Code of Ordinances. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, do you want to describe for the public what we're doing here?
Sure, and I'm actually going to have community development and the police department help me out here because both of these ordinances, the first one dealing with our actual parking and the abandoned vehicle ordinance, they really hold hands or tie together in a sense that they work together well, and Ross will probably jump in a little bit here as well. From my understanding, the language that we were previously operating under was not only cumbersome but difficult if we got to a point where we had a challenge, a legal challenge regarding parking, particularly in the right-of-way, but also with an abandoned or what we had been calling previously as junk vehicles. So I'm going to let Dave and John or Chief Harris explain a little bit what we had going on. And then what these new ordinances allow us to. So forgive me, but they're going to kind of bleed together a little bit. But I think talking about them together, you'll get a better understanding of where we're coming from.
And as City Manager Leon said, if City Attorney Denherter would jump in at any time, that would be greatly appreciated. We spent a number of meeting times, a few hours each time, going through word for word the ordinance. And as was stated, the biggest problem we had was our staff had a fairly clear idea of what looked right or wrong, but the way the language was written was just antiquated and not clear enough or specific enough. One really good example to try and make it tangible to understand is just the definition of what is right-of-way and what are the components of right-of-way. If you ask somebody, an engineer or a planner, what right-of-way is, I'm thinking of that area between property boundaries where there's a street and a sidewalk. And if you ask somebody from the police department what right-of-way is, they might be talking about who goes first at a four-way stop. So little discrepancies like that throughout the entire ordinance were cleared up. Even discussing the types of surface that it's appropriate to park on. So within that right-of-way there might be grass. Well, that doesn't mean that you should park on the grass. You should park on an improved surface, which is pavement or in some cases gravel. Getting all those sorts of things tidied up so it puts the police department, and then on private property where community development is involved in code enforcement, it puts us in a position where we can more clearly indicate to the public what the requirements are. When we get questions from them, what's allowable or what's not, we can much more clearly now answer those questions, and we can much more clearly now enforce the regulations, knowing that if there's a challenge down the road, that we'd be able to be in court at a certain point if need be, confident in our position, where we were not in that position before. I'd like to call it housekeeping, but that term doesn't do the exercise we went through justice. And I guess with that, I would leave it to Chief Harris for any further comments.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here to talk about this. One of the things, like Dave said, a lot of it was cleanup and definitions that we had to define so that everybody knew that we were talking about the same exact things. But there were also some holes in our parking regulations. We dealt with, on a number of occasions over the past year or so, people parking, neighbors parking in front of somebody else's mailbox, for example. And there was nothing that we had in our toolbox that could cause that to stop. And in a neighborhood dispute sometimes, the neighbor would actually park there intentionally so the person, and the mailman will not deliver if they can't drive up to your mailbox and deliver it. So when we looked at the ordinances, we added a piece in there to deal specifically with that issue at a specific time over the week when mail is delivered. So those are the other things we looked at. It wasn't just cleanup, it was looking at what are we trying to accomplish with our parking ordinances to make this a better city, a better community, and make it easier for us to deal with it. And in terms of the abandoned vehicles, the same thing. We had to define what they were, who's responsible for them, where they're located, and where they're located makes a huge difference. Part of the time it's the police department's problem, other times it's the community development group's problem. But if we work together, many times it's both of our problems, and we can actually solve it by working together to create an environment where we can deal with these things and make our community a much better place.
Wow, guys, I have nothing to add. That was great.
Commissioners, any discussion on this item?
There, one section mentioned coasters, roller skates, things like that that cannot be used in the roadway except when crossing a street. So skateboards fall under that ordinance as well? So they can only be on the sidewalks?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Unless they're crossing the street to get
Correct.
to the sidewalk, yep.
I'm glad you brought up that part. I think it's section 14.3.
Correct.
We're approaching the spring musical, which is Xanadu, and we're going to have a lot of high schoolers on roller skates, and I just want to make sure we're not cracking down on students who might be roller skating. I'll make sure to tell them they must be in a crosswalk.
Yeah. And if, to that point, if you do take a look at the red line version, there's a kind of a messy, clean version, we'll say, followed by a red line where you can see the actual changes. The key change in that particular provision was to make it clear that that was a petty offense as opposed to a Class 2 misdemeanor. It was, we have a default provision in our code where if you don't specify what the violation is, it's considered a Class 2, and it seemed like that was appropriate for just a petty cite as opposed to a charge that could potentially carry jail time. Yeah.
And one of the purposes of that specifically is public safety. When you get those kind of activities on a roadway, it can become very dangerous. That wasn't a change in how we actually did it, but it is making it less of a violation.
Correct.
And while I know we're addressing it as far as the sidewalks, but there's a lot of areas in town, specifically by my house, that has no sidewalks at all. And with children and stuff like that, I'm assuming like everything else is going to be a time, you know, we're going to talk to people, a learning curve, I should say, to make sure that that we're not just starting to.
Absolutely. We're not going to go out and start enforcing people just to actually do the enforcement, but it's to provide a public safety issue. We may try to educate young people that might be doing something that is dangerous to themselves. And it's not an idea of enforcement, but it gives us the tools if we have a problem that's a reoccurring and continual problem.
I just thank you for working through this, because just an example of great, departments working together to bring something up to date. But how do we go about picking these out so that we go through them? How did this come about? Because I just said there's some instances through the year, so is that what kind of prompts this?
It does. So we have, the intent was to always go through all the ordinances and revise them, but we have so many that we know we have had issues with that I don't know that we'll ever get through that list in itself to necessarily then start at the beginning. We did the same thing recently with our garbage, solid waste ordinances, and we've done some others. So we have plenty of things that have, just because our community's changed, that have needed tweaks, and so we'll continue to do that. The really valuable thing too is not just changing them, but Dave Mingo and Chief Harris worked together. So Dave Mingo and Brad Beast came to the supervisors meeting at the police department to actually train and talk about these proposed changes. So the police department understands that should you pass this tonight, 20 days after publication, here's what's changes for you in the field. That's another element that we are missing. So it's not just Ross changing the language, but everybody then on from the administrators to our frontline staff understanding how that changes the interpretation and how they do their work. So yeah, it's happened organically, and we'd like to be systematic about it, but we have many things that we need to address. I think we kind of started that 7 or 8 years ago with the animal ordinance, and we're still working down that list.
Sounds like a good SMART goal to start.
So I got one more question, because I have kids and they like their toys. So we know the roller skating, the skateboarding, that kind of stuff. And while, most motorized equipment, people would know not to ride them on the sidewalks and stuff like that. When you get into something like hoverboard, some of the real small stuff that's actually physically motorized, what's okay and what's not as far as sidewalks and streets?
That would be the same section 14.3.
Well, to Amy's point in terms of cleanup, we also have antiquated bicycle and small toy vehicle type ordinances that also need to be cleaned up, which is on my to-do list for this year. I think we do need to better clarify what is permitted on a sidewalk, because right now, if you actually read through our ordinances, you would find that it is unlawful to ride a bicycle on a sidewalk, and most people don't realize that. And I don't think that's probably something this board really is happy with. I think that's probably something we ought to address. So that's a good opportunity to address the issues that you're raising.
Chief Harris, I know it's been a challenge to deal with illegally parked vehicles in the way we've done in the past, so can you talk about the way this would update that process?
Yes, one of the things, in fact, there are 2 areas that we talk about specifically, and they're on illegally parked vehicles. In the past, we had to, if they were creating a hazard, it really wasn't clear that we could actually remove them effectively, and this allows us to anything that's creating a hazard can be immediately taken care of and resolved. If they're a wrecked vehicle or a vehicle that's immovable or creating a hazard, we're allowed to do that now, and that clarified itself in this ordinance very specifically. And the other thing is if anything in violation of any of the code allows us to, if we deem it necessary, then obviously it'd have to be a reason we can actually have it removed.
I think too, the other thing that's valuable is the previous language wasn't clear as to who could take on enforcement, meaning if Officer John comes on duty, shocks a car, and then it's his Friday and he won't be back for another 3 or 4 days. It wasn't clear if we could have the next officer on the same shift come in and take care of that. So we were ending up, taking a really long time if we needed to tow a car. Well, now utilizing technology and documentation, our ordinance makes it clear that, as long as that officer leaves that open, the next shift can come in and address it or follow through on it. So that's real valuable for us too. When people by the time people call us about a vehicle, it's usually already been there for some time.
One of the interesting things is one of the things that upsets people the most is illegally parked vehicles. And, they block driveways, they block places that they're trying to get, they block mailboxes. And by using this and dealing with it, it gives us the authority to deal with it. And we usually go out and deal with complaints. We don't go out just looking for illegally parked cars all over town, unless there's a problem with like a fire hydrant or something that's causing an issue. But the response, generally speaking, in the police department has been to a community complaint. And this allows us to deal with those community complaints in a very positive way.
Yeah, I just know from being around long enough, that's one of the biggest points of frustration is when you have an illegally parked vehicle, and it just seems like the way our ordinance is written, police officers could not do anything about it. So hopefully that helps give you the tools you need to respond to issues. Is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you both for your work on that. Well, and everyone who's been involved with that. I know it's more than just the two of you. Number 7 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-14 regarding the second reading of ordinance number 1030, amending the abandoned motor vehicle regulations in the city of Yankton. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy or Dave, did one of you want to walk the public through what this would entail?
Sure.
I'm happy to take a stab at it here too, I guess. Okay, so this is the yang to the parking ordinance yin, if you know what I mean. The Community Development Department in its nuisance abatement ordinances had had various tools at their disposal for dealing with problem vehicles in people's property. If you had vehicles with wheels that were missing or things of that nature, there's a process for abating that nuisance. There were also procedures in place that are really no longer necessary given the parking ordinance changes that were just made. All vehicles parked on public property or public right-of-way are now something that can be handled through the police powers for appropriate ticketing and towing and things of that nature. So we could remove the aspects of nuisance abatement that were applicable to public property. So that is the prevailing theme of the changes to Article 15. It essentially cleans up the procedures that community development uses for purposes of private property abatement as well, but the key function is to remove what's no longer necessary.
Is there any commission discussion on this item? Again, thank you for your work on this. Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to new business, we have consideration of memorandum 20-16 regarding resolution 20-04, which is a plat of 178 Quarry Pines Drive, and Jason Tramp is the owner. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-17 regarding resolution 20-05, which is a replat of 407 Deer Boulevard. Maureen Stephen is the owner. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-20 and resolution 20-06 regarding a bid award for a 37,000 GVW truck chassis for the solid waste collection division. And the low bid is $76,814 from North Central International. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Number 4, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 20-19 and resolution 20-07 regarding a bid award for 2 56,000 GVW truck chassis for the street division. The low bid is $177,494 from, again, North Central International. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 5 under new business is recommending that February 10th, 2020 be established as the date for a public hearing for the status hearing on the Community Development Block Grant for the Marne Creek project. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have do we need a, yep, okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-21 regarding acceptance, or I should say sewer, storm, and street improvement acceptance for the Benedict Estates Phase 2, which is located around Joseph Circle. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-22 regarding change order number 1 for the Huther Family Aquatic Center. What is your pleasure? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, did you want to talk the public through what these change orders would be, please?
I had a problem this morning on my morning coffee show pronouncing everything, but as you are aware, commissioners, we had really great bids come in for the Huther Family Aquatics Center. And once those bids came in, we talked with our engineers about maybe some ways we could enhance the project to make it a little more attractive, maybe more valuable, things that we would have done had it been in our original budget to do so. One of those things was the parking lot. Instead of an asphalt parking lot, we've talked with our engineers, both here in City Hall and with Stockwell engineers, about making that a concrete parking lot, less maintenance, last longer, etc. So the largest part of that change order is associated with changing that from an asphalt parking lot to a concrete parking lot, which we feel is a very good investment. The other 2 items included in this change order, or 2 of the other items included in this change order, is the addition of a rock climbing wall and the Whibbit Wiggle Bridge. And if you're not familiar with a Whibbit Wiggle Bridge, what that is sort of an obstacle course type structure that goes across, in this case, the competition pool, and kids or I guess kids of all ages or adults work on balancing on that as they walk across one end of the pool to the other, and it's a very popular feature. Now, those are 2 things that we had included in the original design, but didn't include in the original specification because we didn't think our budget allowed for it. But because the bids came in as they did, we feel now that we can include those things. The last item is sodding the turf area inside the fence instead of seeding, and that was really an idea that came from our Parks Department and park staff, knowing that the first year, if we were seeding, well, that would be a less of an expense. It would take a lot longer to establish, and we might end up with, depending upon the spring we have, more mud area than turf area and the sod will just get it up and running a little bit nicer right when we open. So those are the things included in that. Again, the biggest ticket item is the concrete parking lot for the aquatics facility. The change order would increase the project total amount by $468,763. We do have that, we do have that money provided for in the budget. I do want to make the commission aware that we had one individual contact City Hall today. I don't know if they stopped in and Al worked with that individual, but they thought that that was not a good resource and use of city funds. So I just want to bring that forward as the feedback we've gotten. Other than that, I have not heard anything apart from that makes sense. We have one shot to do this. Let's do it right type comments. So I'm happy to answer questions. Also, Adam and Todd are here if you have specific questions.
The concrete is a huge part of it, but that's a good investment, so I like that. Foresee any more? Is there any more additions that are being worked on?
I don't foresee any more, additions or additional features, but in terms of change orders, we just don't know, and then we haven't gotten into construction. So I don't want to go so far as to say as we won't see any change orders. I don't think we're going to have any more enhancements. But, should something come forward from the commission or even from the public that they'd like to consider, we'd certainly take a look at it. But we were given a long list of possibilities from our engineering company from Stockwell, but we kind of looked at those carefully and determined what would be really valuable. And, just because there's enough money budgeted doesn't mean we have to spend it all either. So we wanted to be cognizant of that as well, because it is, public funds, and we want to make sure that we're being good stewards. Part of the decision making was that we know that how hard it is in our capital improvement program once something is built to invest more in it, and so if we're able to invest in these features, that would probably make good sense to do so.
Obviously I spoke publicly against watching this because I think it's important for us to look at our responsibility. I rise in favor of this because I think building it better for less maintenance will pay in the long run. But I just have apprehensiveness for what we add, because we had a bid, not to say we don't want to build a good solid water park, obviously, but we had a certain responsibility that we had certain amenities that we sold to the public and they voted on. And I just think we need to be careful on what items we add if that wasn't in the package. Not that I think when we enhance concrete, that's a different story, because in the long run we're saving money. But I think we should be careful what we offer to the public for the tax and what they're getting, so we don't add a lot of things that they didn't vote on. It would be fair.
One thing I think should be added or kept in mind in regards to the asphalt versus concrete, the asphalt part of the parking lot was not included in the bid. We had $170,000 budgeted outside of that project in the city budget for the asphalt to be done by city forces. So when comparing the number in the change order, the 400-some thousand, you need to deduct the 170,000 we already had saved elsewhere. So it's really about a $250,000 difference going from the asphalt to the concrete. I just thought that should be mentioned. So.
If the public's wondering, the concrete change, that will be $410,876. $410,876. The sod would be $31,193. The climbing wall would be $17,501, and the Wiggle Bridge would be $9,193. And like Amy said, those features, the climbing wall and the bridge, are things that we had hoped to put in originally, but because of the estimates we were getting were cut out, correct? And then the turf, I think, sounds like a very good idea, so we aren't having mud there that first year. So I think they're very thoughtful additions. Does anyone else have anything to add? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 8, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 20-18, and this is regarding 2 memorandum of understandings between the Yankton Police Department and the Isaac Walton League of America Yankton chapter, as well as the Yankton County Sharpshooters Association. And this would be for use of those 2 organizations' firing ranges for our police officers. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 9, under new business, is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 1032, establishing February 10th, 2020 as the date for the second reading and public hearing regarding the first supplement to the 2020 annual appropriation ordinance number 1024. Do we have an introduction?
Introduced.
It has been introduced. Is there any commission discussion on this item before we proceed? All right, then we will move on to number 10 under new business, and that is consideration of memorandum 20-24 in support of resolution 20-08, acknowledging the hiring of Lisa Yardley as our deputy finance officer. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, did you want to explain to the public why we have to officially introduce Lisa?
Sure. She's already here, so she doesn't have to sweat at all. But because of the nature of her position, Lisa's bonded in such a way that our insurance and our bonding companies require that you all take formal action, and it's within the minutes that she is officially hired as the deputy finance officer. She's got a high degree of responsibility and a lot of access to city funds, et cetera, and we want to make sure we're following that protocol as well. So we have done a thorough background check on Ms. Yardley, and we've looked into all that, and so we're confident in her abilities and all of those types of things. So that's why we're recommending approval and getting her in the minutes so she can start planting the money trees with Al and paying for everything.
Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Welcome again, Lisa. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. With that, we've exhausted tonight's agenda. I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual, litigation, and personnel matters under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Is anyone opposed? This meeting is adjourned into executive session.